Okay, hey guys. We're going to do chapter 4, medical, legal, and ethical issues. I'm going to start out by telling you go ahead and have your notebook and pencil and pen ready. Um, this is stuff you do need to know. It's pretty important. You're going to see it on tests and quizzes throughout your career, and you need to know it from me actually are in the field. So, um, the EMS educational standard. Um, so we need to know about consents and refusals, confidentiality, advanced directives, tort and criminal actions, evident uh, preservation, like on crime scenes and stuff, statutory responsibilities, mandatory reporting, ethical principles, moral obligations, and end of life issues. We're going to go over each one of these. I'm going to give you my opinion. You still have to read your chapter as always. So laws differ from location to locations, state regulation, national regulations, your personal protocol, whoever your medical director is, their rules and regulations. So the big things are do no harm to whatever procedures we decide we need to do for whatever reason. We cannot cause harm. Provide all your care in good faith. Once again, we're doing this to help people. That means that you can't pump the blood pressure up extra tight because this guy is a pain in the butt, or use a 16 gauge IV when a 20 is going to work just fine. And provide proper consistent care. Be compassionate and maintain your composure. You're going to hear me preach this throughout these videos of it's not your emergency. I know that's really hard sometimes depending on the call. So we've got to be professional. This is our job. Be compassionate as if it's your own family member. And we've got to be consistent. We've got to, once, this is a whole other chapter we'll talk about, but once care starts, once you arrive, we want that care to go forward. We never want to go backwards. So, and we're going to get into reporting and stuff later, but it's important that we start care and we continue to move forward and we give report very clearly. This is what I did. This was the outcome, so that we never go back and redo something and waste time, or the hospital goes back and does something that you've already done. So we want to continue that care. The duty to act. So if you're employed by an EMR or by an agency or a fire department, if you're on an ambulance or an independent ambulance, a city, whatever it might be, if you're employed by them and you're dispatched to the scene of an accident or illness, you have the duty to act. You have to act. You must proceed quickly, safely. We talked about that on a chapter or two ago. To the scene and provide care that's within your scope of practice. If you decide not to respond because you're whatever, if you're on the clock and you are supposed to respond, you have to respond. If you don't, for some whatever reason, you or your agency could be held liable for that and face legal actions. Standard of care is in the manner in which you must act or behave. So you must meet 2 criteria. Treat patients to the best of your ability. Once again, every patient is like a family member that you like. Provide care that is reasonable, prudent, person with similar training, or provide under similar situations. So you've got to provide care that someone with your license level would also deliver. You can't, if you will, half-ass it. Okay. Let's see. Scope of practice. Our scope of care is defined as U.S. Department of Transportation's Emergency Medical Responder Educational Standards. Medical protocols are standing orders. This is regional, state, whatever, online medical direction. So we've kind of talked about this a couple chapters ago. Your protocols are what your medical director has allowed you to do. You have actually passed your skills and they have signed off, your medical director has said, you have permission to do X, Y, and Z without my permission. This is your permission. It's the written standing orders. Your APL is what it's called. When you pass and you get hired somewhere, you will receive your APLs, which is your written permission to act. And then you've got your online medical direction, which we talked about. Remember, if you're online, then you are online with phone, you're online with the radio, something, and you are talking to that medical director or that physician. Let's see. Ethical responsibilities. So treat the patient ethically means doing so in a manner that conforms to accepted professional standards of conduct. So we've got to stay up to date with our skills and knowledge. So we always, once you're in EMS, whether this is fire, police, or responding dispatchers, we all have to have continuing education. We have to stay up on our skills because things are always changing. If you're passionate about it, then you will want to study more and be the best you can be. Review your performance and assess your techniques. Always room for improvement. When you're done with skills, you say you're never going to do it again. We use those skills on a daily basis. So I'm not going to say you're going to screw up, but I will tell you from experience, you're going to make mistakes. You are never a failure. You never fail if you learn from it. I can't push that hard enough. When mistakes are made, learn from it, get better at it, and move on. Okay. Evaluate your response times. This, depending on where you are, rural America, like I am, sometimes response times can be longer because we might be actually responding 30, 40 minutes away. Your agency, whoever you go to work for, they have an expected response time. Try to follow up patient outcomes. You don't have to do this. You can if your agency allows it. In a small town like I live in, a lot of times I hear through the grapevine how my patient turned out. I don't have to go seek them out. Take continuing education classes. We have to do that. We have to have so many set hours, I think every 2 years, that we turn into the national registry, and then that allows us to maintain our license. Participate in quality improvement activities. Guys, there's always trainings out there. Once you're in with an agency, those agencies might have training, or you can find training online. Once again, do your best to be the best. Practice, practice, practice. Don't burn yourself out. But if you have a weakness, work on it until it's not a weakness anymore. Because when it really matters, you're going to want to be good at it. Ethical behavior requires honesty. So always provide complete and correct reports to EMS providers. Never change the report except to correct an error, which we can amend reports. So we never want to scribble something out. If you're doing it by paper, if you are and there's a mistake, you can one line and then initial it. Most everybody's going to be using tablets and computers. If you have finished that report or that narrative and you have actually locked it and you realize that something needs added or a correction needs made, you can go back in and do an admin, and that's just you go under your report and you type in what's being corrected and why. And EMS providers, so if we arrive on scene and you're the first responder, we need to know everything you found out: name, date of birth, allergies, that first set of vitals, which we've talked about a little bit. Super critical, because that gives us somewhere to start, and we can watch the trend, whether they get better or worse. Tell us everything you've done up to that point and how they reacted to it. Consent simply means giving approval or permission. So there's different types of consent. You do need to know these for your test, for your quiz, and for real life situations. So go ahead and we want to make notes of these. So you have your express consent, which is exactly what it sounds like the patient actually lets you know verbally or non-verbally, so it can be as simple as a head shake, that they do want to receive care from you. Sometimes called actual consent. So patients must be legal age to make this decision. There are cases, and I told you I can't read when we started this class, down there where it says discuss the whatever with minors. So if they are, I think it's 16, and have a child, if they're 16 and married, if they are living on their own, then you can treat them as an adult, but know your state and regulation rules. Go ahead and look that up. I don't want to tell you wrong. There is certain rules there with that one though. Implied consent. Patient does not specifically refuse emergency care. Do not hesitate to treat an unconscious patient. So we walk up, nobody's around, this patient's unconscious, we're going to treat them. Okay, we're just going to, it's implied that they would want help. And then consent for minors. Under the law, minors are not considered capable of speaking for themselves. So emergency treatment must wait till a patient or a parent or legal guardian consents to treatment. But if it's a life threat, we're going to treat it anyway. If permission cannot be quickly obtained, do not hesitate to give appropriate medical care, especially if it's a life threat. Life threat, we don't question, we just do it. It's best, though, to make that effort to contact that legal guardian. Consent of the patient with a mental illness. So you might run into this. If a person appears to be a threat to their self or others, including you, place this person under medical care. If you feel it's in a dangerous situation, let's go ahead and get law enforcement involved. Know your state's legal mechanisms for handling these patients. Do not hesitate to involve law enforcement, as I said. A competent adult has the legal rights to refuse treatment. Help the person understand consequences of refusal care and explain the treatments, the reason treatment's needed, the potential risk if treatment is not provided, and alternative treatments that might help. So you're going to get patients who you know they need help. We do this because we care. That's why we get into this job. And there's going to be patients who do not want, they call 911 themselves, but then they don't want you to help them. Okay. Or there's going to be calls where you know they need help, but they refuse to let you touch them. These are really frustrating. These are really hard. You need to explain to them why this is important. And some of these people are going to get super aggravated and maybe even angry with you when you won't leave them alone, if you will. Don't sit there and hound. Professionally explain to them what's wrong with them and why it is crucial that they get help. I have went as far, not just me, my coworkers as well. My partner, I might say, okay, so can we help you to the car? And then we will follow you to the hospital. Some people are worried about the bill they might get. Some people are scared to death of needles and they think we're just going to be stabbing them. I live in a rural area. It's a small town. So a lot of times I can convince people to, take a private vehicle and I'll go to the hospital in the ambulance and give a report just like if I treated them. I ask them to sign that refusal. They're happy. Everybody wins. Patient got to the hospital. There was no fighting. Sometimes you're going to get those people, though, that just get flat angry and want you out of their house. Tell them what you can on the way out the door. Patient refusal should be documented on your patient care report according to your agency's protocol. So EMRs don't do paperwork, which you guys are so lucky. Wish I had that problem. When you start doing documentation, it's good to start learning now. If you have an EMT, an advanced or paramedic partner, go ahead and sit with them. Have them teach you how to do those reports. And if you are just really gung-ho, a lot of people will go, hey, if you want to do that report, I'll help you, so that you learn. Because if you want to go on to EMT, it's something you have to know. So why not go ahead and know how to do it now? Point of this, though, is everything has to be documented correctly at the best of your ability. For not only your medical director, but a lot of these are for census, if you will. How many car wrecks there were in America last year that EMS responded to? How many deaths? were caused by drug overdoses. That kind of stuff goes into a database, and they do get numbers. And we also can improve our education and improve our treatments based on what's worked and what hasn't nationwide. So it's important we use these documents for that reason, and that they are filled out correctly. With that being said, I'm going to jump real quick. Even if you know a mistake was made on that call, it needs to be documented. Sometimes it's better to take a slap on the wrist than try to hide something, or to get away with hiding something, and it happens again and again and again because no one noticed that there was an issue taking place. And an advance directive is a document that specifies that a person would like to be done, what a person would like to be done if he or she becomes unable to make his or her own medical decisions. So example, let's just say that my dad's in bad shape and he wants me to be his medical director, or his advance directive person, not medical director, sorry. Then he goes to the hospital for some reason and he's not quite with it mentally, then I can make those calls without his permission. A living will is a written document drawn up by the patient, a physician, and a lawyer, states what type of medical care a person wants or wants withheld. Yes, I want this, this, and this, but please don't put a tube down my throat. It's kind of how that goes, okay? A durable power of attorney for health care allows a patient to designate another person to make decisions about medical care. That's kind of what we talked about right here. It goes right in line with the advance directive, actually, yeah. They do not resuscitate. DNR order is exactly what it sounds like. Written request giving permission to medical personnel to withhold resuscitation in the event of a cardiac arrest. So they don't want CPR. This has to be present. You have to see the document. You have to see a hard copy. They can't just tell you about it. It has to be a piece of paper held in your hand. It must be signed for it to actually count. In my career, 5 or 6 years, I don't even know how long I've done this now. There's only been one time that I had to ask for a DNR and they didn't have it. They told me this patient had a DNR. I said, I need a copy of it. And they screamed at me, they don't know where it is. So I calmly explained to them, without it in my hand, I have to proceed with life-saving procedures. And then I went about doing my job. Additional terms for these types of orders are your MOLST and your POLST. Let's see. If you are unable to determine if an advance directive is legal, valid, being appropriate, begin appropriate care. Some states have systems in place such as bracelets to identify patients with advance directives. It's just hey, they've got one, kind of, you can ask family members, if they know where the copies are. Abandonment occurs when a trained person begins emergency care and then leaves the patient before another trained person takes over. I'm on duty or I'm off duty. I show up to a car wreck and I'm first on scene and I start care and my wife calls and says supper's ready. So I leave before the ambulance gets there. That's abandonment. Someone of my level or higher. So once again, I'm on that scene and 2 EMT basics show up. Technically, I can't leave until they take full control and put that patient in the truck because I'm an advanced. So once you start care, you don't stop until you are told to stop, or someone higher than you arrives to take over. Once you've started treatment, you must continue it until the person who has at least as much training arrives and takes over. That's what we just talked about. If you see any signs that a person is alive, you should begin providing care. So this is people dead at the scene. So I'll read these and then we'll go over it. You cannot assume a person is dead unless one of the following conditions exists. So decapitation, obviously, rigor mortis, tissue decomp, and dependent lividity. know your local protocols, know what your agency's doing. Rigor mortis is a big one. If they're stiff as a board and they're already, you know, lividity setting in and they're getting that bluish purple color, they're gone. If you show up though and they still have decent color, they're still warm to the touch, my favorite thing to do is I will just touch the head. If the head moves or if the arm will freely move, then yeah, we need to go ahead and do CPR. Because there is still, especially if they're still warm and their color's good. But if you see any of these and the person's dead, we've still got know your protocols. Like my protocol says I have to do at least a 4 lead. I have to print out a strip on my monitor showing that there's no activity in the heart. You can also hook up your AED pads and see if they're shock advised. If any signs of death are present, consider the patient to be dead. You know, we're still going to check pulse. We're still going to check for that rigor mortis setting in. It is important that you know the protocols your department uses in dealing with patients who are dead at sea. So that, like I said, know your protocols. If you get hired somewhere, I'm sure they will make you, in most places, go through the protocol book. You will have to be tested out on it. My particular agency, we had to take a protocol test. We have to do skills every so often, and we have to do those skills according to protocol. Negligence occurs when a patient sustains further injury or harm because care administered did not meet the standard of care. You didn't do what you're supposed to, or you did over your scope practice, and care or harm was done because of it. Negligence, guys, you need to be writing this stuff down because I promise there's going to be questions about it. These 4 conditions must be present for negligence: a duty to act, breach of duty, resulting injury, and proximate cause. Okay. Most patient information is confidential. So patient history, assessment findings, treatment provided, your communication with the patient. Information should be shared only with medical personnel who are directly involved with patient care. Read that sentence a couple times. I'm going to tell you what it means, but get this in your head. So the patient's history, your assessment findings, your treatment provided, and your communication with the patient. Whatever you tell them and they tell you, you only can speak about this to the people that are involved. So your partner, if there's, like in my town, if the fire department is on that truck with me, helping me, and then the hospital, which I take that patient to, that's the only people that get this information. If you need to go to your supervisor and discuss something, yes, you may do that. Nowhere else. If law enforcement comes to you and says, I need that report, or if it's not like a criminal thing, then they need to fill out, there's a separate piece of paper that they need to fill out, and they have to go through your supervisor. Your best friend who's a coworker calls you and goes, hey, what the heck happened? Sorry, can't talk about it. Super important. This is HIPAA. And we have got to keep that patient's information confidential. That's part of our job. That's part of them trusting us and what we do. Remember that when we go to these people, when we go to these 911 calls, they are putting their life, they're putting their kids' lives, they're putting whoever's life in our hands. So we have a duty to protect that patient. That's our job. Okay. In certain situations, you may release confidential information to designated individuals. Okay. So the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, HIPAA, strengthens laws for the protection of privacy of healthcare information and safeguards patient confidentiality. HIPAA is huge. HIPAA is for EMS. HIPAA is for any medical personnel. The Good Samaritan laws, so protect citizens from liability for error and omission to giving good faith emergency care. Vary considerably from state to state, may no longer be needed, and provides little to no legal protection for EMS providers. So Good Samaritan law is, I am an unlicensed person. I stop on the side of the street and I help someone and they try to sue me for it. I'm protected by the Good Samaritan law because I was giving good faith emergency care, as long as I don't, if I'm just a guy on the side of the street, you don't want me trying to intubate you or do a tracheometry with a straw or a pen because you've seen it on TV. You can't do that kind of stuff. But if you are truly just trying to be a good person and do the bare minimum and help someone, you put an ACE bandage on someone because they're bleeding and they try to sue you, you're protected. But us EMS people, we are licensed, we have scope of practice, and we have protocols that we have to follow. So this does nothing for us. Regulations, become familiar with federal, state, local, and agency regulations that affect your job. Certifications and registration may be required to work as an EMR. You are always responsible for keeping certification regulations current. There's going to be a question on your quiz or test that says whose responsibility is it to keep your license, certifications, or registrations current. That is, in the end, it is your responsibility. Yes, a lot of departments have someone that will keep track of that and remind you, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z. But in the end, it is your responsibility. I don't know an agency that doesn't require certifications or regulations, so you do have to have that. And I've said it a lot. Know your agency's protocols, know the state regulations, and your national regulations. Reportable crimes. So anytime there's a knife wound, gun wound, motor vehicle, suspected child or elder abuse, domestic violence, dog bites, rape, anything that's considered a crime or a major incident, we need to make sure that law enforcement knows that. We need to probably let our supervisor, our director, or whoever is in charge of us know about it. Learn which crimes are reportable in your area and know your agency procedures in reporting these crimes. Failure to notify proper authorities reportable events may result in penalties against you and your agencies. So especially with the one suspected child and elder abuse, if I take a patient to the hospital and I have seen or I have heard something, I will usually pull the charge nurse aside, or if I can get with the physician, like I said, I'm in a small town, so that's possible. I will say, hey, this is what I seen, this is what I heard, this is what I think might be going on. So I do report that to the hospital so they have a heads up, and I will usually call my director and drive her insane by, this is what happened, what do you want me to do? And there are times when you have to fill out an incident report, or you have to call Child Protective Services or for the elderly. Learn which crimes are reportable. We read that. Okay. Sorry. Crime scene operations. So many emergency medical situations are also crime scenes. Keep these considerations in mind. So we got to protect ourselves. That's number one, right? Us, our partner, our patient. So we don't go in until police okay it. If you determine that the crime is unsafe, wait until law enforcement's there. Yep. Your first priority is your first priority is your safety and the patient. Considerations. When you are assessing the scene, document anything that seems unusual. Move patient only if necessary. Touch only what needs to be touched to gain access to the patient. Make a mental note if you move anything. Preserve crime scenes for investigations. So we don't want to touch things. We don't want to move things unless we absolutely have to. Do not cut through knife or bullet holes in the patient's clothing. So if we do trauma naked, which we'll talk about later, we want to cut away from that bullet hole, that knife hole, whatever it is, to remove those clothings. And then we need to make sure that law enforcement gets those clothing articles or articles of clothing, okay? Because they are evidence. Considerations. So be careful where you place equipment. We don't want to just be dropping equipment in blood or footprints or whatever. Keep non-essential people away. We don't need 15 people on a patient that takes 2 people to work on. Work with the appropriate law enforcement authorities on scene. Communication goes a long ways. You've heard me already in this class say, verbalize, verbalize, verbalize. This is one of them times where we work with them, okay? We're all on the same team. You're going to hear me as this class goes through. I'm going to give fire department a lot of heck, and it's just because I respect them. I work one-on-one with them a lot, but we give each other a hard time. But when it comes down to it, we are on one team, and that's the same with law enforcement. So we all work together. Consider writing a short report about the incident. This is then going to come down between you and your supervisor. You're going to do your patient care report, or your partner is. Sometimes in situations, it's good to go ahead and do an incident report or a small documentation of what you've seen and what you did on scene. And you and your partner will do that. Your director or your supervisor can file that away and have it in case it goes to court later. Your documentation is the initial account describing patient condition and care administered. Serves as a legal record of your treatment, provides a basis for evaluating and quality of care provided, and should be clear, concise, accurate, and readable. This is facts only. This is not your opinion. I got to stress that a lot. It should just be cut and dry, A, B, and C. Okay, we don't need to go down rabbit holes. More on documentation. It should be the condition of the patient when found. The patient was lying on the floor, holding their abdomen, grimacing from abdominal pain. Patient description of injury. Patient stated that stomach is hurt for 2 days. Pain is 7 out of 10. Or patient fell off ladder and struck head if it's an injury. Patient's initial and repeat vital signs. These are important, and I'm going to harp on this throughout the course also. That first set of vital signs is critical because we need to know if our interventions are improving the patient or if the patient is still trending down. Treatment you gave the patient. So what did we do for this patient? And how did they react to it? Agency and personnel who took over treatment of the patient. So if you're on scene and I show up with my partner, it was Evan and so-and-so that I gave a report to. This is what I reported. Any reportable condition present, any infectious disease exposure. That's an important one too. And we'll get into that later. Anything unusual regarding the situation. Was there something that didn't feel right or that just bothered you? We need to know about that. So the summary, as an EMR, you have the duty to act when you're dispatched on a medical call as part of the official duty. You should understand the differences between express consent and implied consent, consent for minors, consent for patients with mental illnesses, and the right for patients to refuse care. We didn't talk a whole lot about that. If they are able to answer normal questions, what is today? What year is it? Where are we? What town do you live in? How many quarters are in a dollar? Those kind of questions that should just be easily answered. That's what they need to, if they answer them correctly, then they're within their mental right and they can refuse care. Advanced directives give a patient the right to have care withheld. You should understand the concepts of abandonment, neglect, or negligence, and confidentiality, as well as propose a good Samaritan law. Certain events that deal with contagious disease, abuse, and illegal acts must be reported to the proper authorities. Crime scene operations are a complex environment. Your job is not complete until paperwork or documentation is done. Understanding and following 3 concepts will help you be a good EMR. So we are going to go over all of this throughout the course. This stuff will be repeated. You're going to have this stuff on tests and quizzes throughout your EMS career. Even if you go all the way to paramedic, the laws don't change. You still have to know it. So guys, that's it. Thank you for putting up with me. That was chapter 4, and I will catch you on chapter 5.